Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Hello, it's Dr. Gemma, and this is episode 124 of the Cognitive Podcast. And if you look in the show notes, you will see a picture of my now 17-year-old son celebrating the event with a big old hunk of cheesecake because he wanted to celebrate at Cheesecake Factory with all of us. We went last weekend, which was slightly after his birthday, and a great time was had by all. But I am looking at him and he looks like a man. It's freaking me out. Those of you with children, oh my gosh, snuggle with your little flour sacks. They grow up. I have to tell you now, it is totally uncool. If I walk up to him and kiss the top of his head, which is now higher than the top of my head, she said, grinding her teeth, he gets kind of sullen, and I just say to him, I'm sorry, kid, but you have to put up with it because I'm your mother. And I have been teaching him since he was a small child a statement which I highly recommend to you, which is as follows: you will always be my baby. I don't care how big you get. This allows you to embarrass your kid in public when he's a teenager by doing things like kissing him on the head in front of his classmates. In the warm thanks department, again, I want to thank everybody for your very sweet and gracious comments about the passing of our well-beloved blankets. And we're doing okay. We're doing okay with that. I want to thank our own Sal Pal for loving on my Minerva. She needed some this week because we were all kind of grieving. And also, you were talking about sign language, etc. Well, I got so angry in class the other night. One of my classmates was telling me about a professor who told her that because she was in her 60s, she cannot learn new things, and research has proven it. At which moment, cover your children's ears. Everybody, cover your children's ears. At which moment, I realized, without really thinking about it, that I can sign the words, he can eat my shirt. Except there was no R in shirt. It's amazing, really, when you get revved up in a language that you think you don't know how to speak, you can suddenly develop four-letter words. The beauty, of course, of ASL is you can finger spell them if you don't know the sign for them. I did spend an entire session with a deaf patient trying to catch the word sucks because she kept saying it. And I began to realize I was catching it. Oh, the joys of ASL. Thanks, Sal Pal. Hey, Carmel, welcome back. It's good to see you. Hope the little ones are doing good. You were talking about, I think, the chatelaine. I just ordered a little tiny watch on a necklace, which also has a clip for chatelaine. We shall see. My chatelaine has gotten pretty complicated. I am deeply in love with my belt chatelaine. I am deeply in love with it. Our own Amy Storm is suggesting that I put a little hidden block dedicated to Minerva on the Don't Know Yet blanket. I think that's very interesting in light of what we're going to talk about in the strategy today. And in that same light, believe me, there's a little blankets on the blanket already. Thank you, Amy. Knitting Hiker, big warm hugs. Turbo Gal, thank you also for the love on the Don't Know Yet and for the comment about our blankets on the Instagram account. I really appreciate that. Blue-haired hiker, I bet you're not listening. She's on the Appalachian Trail all by herself, hiking northward. She's posting most days. Wow, this is so cool. Here in the techno age, We can actually follow people as they walk up these long trails like the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Crest. Wow, wow, wow. Good luck, our own blue-haired hikers. Stay safe out there. So you say, but Gemma, what's on your hooks and needles? Well, we had a surprise project this week. I went to class and the teacher started expounding on one of our final projects. The problem with this teacher is she keeps giving final projects, so the number keeps growing and growing. And she keeps thinking up new projects and putting them up. I do not like, on the software for classes called Canvas, which I think everybody's using now, high schools and colleges, teachers can post assignments week by week. So suddenly a new assignment appears for next week, for example. What I really hate is this teacher must love to grade papers. She's extremely assignment heavy. And I also wish they would just post the whole set of assignments and I could work on them at my own pace. But no. Anyway, she wants us to do what she calls the Deaf Culture Project, which is an art project. And she has all these examples, and they run the whole gamut from absolutely horrifying to really spectacular. Well, you had to know I was going to find a way to bring yarn into this. And this week, while she was talking about it, I was sketching in my notepad and thinking about it. Actually, I was sketching on my Remarkable pad and thinking about it. And it really hit me that yarn also means to tell a story. So in other words, back in the 1920s, you have the British author John Buchan, who talks about, well, we all went to the club and started yarning. We started telling each other stories. And I thought about the stories we've heard in class from deaf presenters. And so I decided, I was drawing it first. I was going to do a timeline of typical experiences in the life of a deaf person who's born in a hearing family. And then I thought, why am I drawing this? Why am I not knitting this? And so I went home, and first thing I did was decided that it should be in hand spun yarn. And there are a lot of reasons, both practical and artistic. Number one, I've got a lot of little bits of hand spun that aren't going anywhere, and thought this would be a good use for them actually. Number two, I decided that deaf people pretty much are very, very isolated in the American mainstream. We have very few facilities for deaf people. It is really impressive. The numbers of the deaf are not that high, and that's part of the problem, and they tend to have to move to a more urban area if they want to encounter a deaf culture that's active and vibrant. Deaf kids out on the farm in the middle of nowhere have some pretty difficult situations to face. So anyway, I was thinking about all that, and I started sketching it out in terms of a timeline using colors to indicate different experiences. The upshot is I made a scarf called Deaf Yarning, and this is my art project for the deaf culture class. And I used crochet because I did not want to spend the rest of my life on this. And I wanted to work it out fast because I wasn't sure how I was going to do the proportions on it. So I modeled it after the life story of one of our most recent speakers who's only 26. So I said, okay, that's good enough. So this is kind of an attenuated lifespan, I guess I would say. But I did do it. And it's a world of fun. I wanted to crochet it because I wanted to be able to rip it out if I didn't like what it was doing. And I wanted to be able to reconfigure it and to change colors and switch things off. And I wanted to do it quickly. So I did that. So you can see a picture of me, and I'm wearing it like a regular scarf in both pictures. Because also I thought, if this is my art project, art always represents the artist, whether the artist wants it to or not. But I thought, based on who I am, that which is beautiful should also be usable. That which is usable should also be beautiful. So of course I made an object that could be used. And so there it is, the crocheted scarf. It's not perfect by any means. It's a little bit uneven in places. It has its problems. But generally I think I did pretty well. This made me really happy because also it took out 6 skeins of yarn from my stash, and that was pretty exciting. So the stash toss currently is 4 skeins in versus 27 skeins out. Oh, crochet, there is nothing like it for eating yarn. And deft yarning did a lot of good things for me. I had a lot of doubt making it. It took me about 2 days, and I really just romped through it. I really thought, I feel so unsteady and so unsure about this. And I tried to envision myself presenting it to the class, and I know it will be a one-of-a-kind. I know nobody else is going to work in yarn. And that was really kind of intimidating for me. But I did it, and I worked on it as quickly as I could. And in terms of color, it's not as harmonious as I might like, but it does the job. It really does the job. And so I had a really, really great time with it. And I'm slowly falling in love with it, but it's really out of the ordinary. So other things that happened, I was, of course, tossing my stash to find all this yarn and looking through all my hand-spun yarn, and was really, really happy with that. Really used up some bits and bobs that really would have no other place to go. And I based the scarf on a bulky weight and used a K hook, by the way, because I figured it's easier to take a thinner yarn and double it than it would be to have an already bulky yarn. And I really wanted to use this Jacob wool that was a gift to me from Stashy Mama years ago. And I had spun this and realized it was kind of hard. And I wish I'd saved it and made a rug out of it. And I've been looking at those spun skeins thinking, what am I going to do with these? It's actually beautiful, though. I actually looked at it and said, this is really beautiful. It does have a very nice hand. I was very pleased, a bit unexpectedly, with how soft and wearable the Jacob is. So this is outerwear, and I'm very pleased. But this also made me toss the stash. And I discovered my sock yarn leftovers. I got to worrying last week as I was working on the Spring is Coming socks. Now, I am on the foot of a top-down Spring is Coming sock, my first one. I'm past the waist yarn for the heel, and I'm really enjoying it. And this is, again, 2010, the yarn. We are in deep stash. I have to say a lot of the hand-spun I used, all of the hand-spun I used, frankly, the most recent was about 2 years ago. We were in deep stash. I cannot tell you how satisfying that is, to be able to go into your stash and find exactly what you need. So I was thinking about the Franken socks that I make every year at Halloween, and I thought, you know, I've worn through 3 pairs of socks this winter, it's true. So I'm making at least 3 pairs of socks to replace them. And I thought, oh, these beautiful designer yarns, though, are thin and they wear through relatively quickly. If you want your socks to last, man, Regia, Opal, okay. And so I thought, the problem is I make these Franken socks. I lost one of my pairs of Franken socks. I had 3. Now I'm down to 2. And I thought, you know, the foot of these socks was one of the softer yarns. I don't want to do that. So I went romping through my stash thinking, I have no yarn to make the feet of my next Franken socks. Yeah, I do. And the really great thing was I discovered I have yarn galore. Waist sock yarn, extra sock yarn galore. I could be cranking these babies out. And I'm really thinking about that. Like, what does that mean? That I could just be periodically just keep a pair of needles on the side, and when I finish a sock, I could immediately take the yarn from it and make a few stripes on those side socks. And I thought, you know, it's true. I could have an ongoing project of progressive sock making where I just add a stripe every now and then until I get to the foot. And then I could put it all on waist yarn and come back to it or whatever. But I thought, you know, there's food for thought that I could be working on those. And every now and then when I need an FO, I could just whip out one of those guys and stick a foot on it in a solid color, or rather in a non-striping set of yarns there. But anyway, this is me tootling along. The good news is I did find I have a huge collection of leftover sock yarn. The other thing that came to mind is if there's anybody out there collecting sock yarn bits to do a blanket or something, I may go looking for that. But meanwhile, the Spring is Coming socks, I did work on that. That's been very happy. I'm glad I'm working on that. It really gives me something very portable to carry along. However, Vestuary 2023, it's on to the ribbing. It's a great fit. I finished the front this week, and I seamed up the shoulders, and I put it on, and it's a great fit, which is to say, It's just the right length, because when I do the ribbing, that will pull it up shorter, but when I do the washing and the blocking, that will stretch it a bit. So I have discovered that the fit I get at this stage without the ribbing is really, really accurate for the fit I'm going to get, because the ribbing will shorten it, but then the blocking will lengthen it again. So the Vestory 2023 is just terrific, and it's so perfect. It's so beautiful. I don't know why I've let this yarn sit in my stash for 14 years. Honest to gosh, this is the most beautiful yarn. And Cascade doesn't make it anymore, of course, which is, of course. Okay, the Lane Splitter, no love. The Don't Know Yet, I believe I've got row 16 is at my feet in the cardboard carton of Doomy Doom Doom. And I'm about halfway through seaming those short seams. I was talking to a friend on the phone this morning and got that going. Row 15, I have clipped it to the body of the blanket, and I've done a little bit of the long edge. But mostly this week, I was working on the short seams of row 16. I think I saw this as a project where I always was doing the short edges of the next row first, and then returning to the body of the blanket and sewing on the previous row that has its short seams finished, and then weaving in ends. It doesn't matter. That's what I've learned. Just whatever I want to do. If I want to do work on the big body of the blanket, or if I want to do the short edges. It is getting important, I think, to get these things done, because it's going to be too hot here to have the Don't Know Yet blanket on my lap. Right now, it would fit a twin-size bed if I turned it sideways. That it is so wide, it would do perfectly well on a twin. And I have been sleeping under it. When I've been sick and I was sleeping on my love seat in here to stay upright, I have been sleeping under the Don't Know Yet, and it's been wonderful. The other strange and wonderful thing is Blankets, in her last weeks of life, started taking naps on the Don't Know Yet. I'm afraid that means it does need a little bit of a washing, but I cannot tell you. Every now and then I look over my shoulder. It's not real dirty. It's just the occasional sort of spot where she kind of drooled a little bit. But I'll look over my shoulder and I'll see one of those little spots, and weirdly it makes me happy. This is acrylic. It's going to come off. I will soak it first in the washing machine, and then I will wash it. But I don't know, I feel like I got some blankets in there. Meanwhile, the Pennsylvania Dutch embroidery, not yet, but I have picked up a couple embroidery books. I wanted to refresh my knowledge of basic stitches. And I think the best one, I got one at Joann's, and it's the DMC guide, as I mentioned last week. That's really the guide. Don't go online. Seriously, if you want to get a really good guide to the traditional stitches, go to Joann Fabrics. They have been selling it for the last 40 years. It's the DMC guide. It's spiral bound. It really does the trick. Meanwhile, my favorite resources are all there, all listed, all looking good. And I have not really been spinning too much. So on to the strategy. And of course, the strategy goes back to Blankets leaving her mark on my blanket. The strategy, I was going to skip this one, but then realized, no, this is really subtly important. And it is kintsugi, golden repair. That is, the Japanese, if they break a dish and they decide to restore it, they will often use molten gold to repair the seam. And of course, this means that right away when you look at the repaired object, you see the repair. And that is kintsugi, the idea that even flaws have value, and that a flaw that you repair brings freshness and change. Now, if you're paying attention, we're back at the idea that there is no perfection. All things change. The Buddhists have an old sort of story or koan where they say, why do you weep because you broke that vase? It was always the fate, the destiny of the vase to be broken. You have had it in an unbroken form for a while, so celebrate that. But at the same time, you must accept that it was always meant to be, that this beautiful object would break. And kintsugi is about that. It's about understanding that objects break and that we can show the break instead of hiding the break or disposing of the object. Why do I care about this? Are you nuts? I'm 62 years old. Why do you think I care about this? I mean, seriously, do I look like I looked 20 years ago? Do I look like I looked in 2008 when I started this podcast 15 years ago? You bet I don't. When I started this podcast, I was fresh off running marathons. I had a 2-year-old child. I was way different. I had so much exciting stuff in front of me. I was going to be a supervisor. I was going to work in the prison. I was already at that time. I was going to raise a son. I was doing all these charity races. I was really learning to knit. Oh, gosh. Well, I don't look like that anymore. I'm sagging in a few places. I could use a little golden repair, let's face it. But I think that, all joking aside, kintsugi is about the way we handle other people. It's about not favoring only the young, not being in a culture of the young, realizing that age and time have value. Middle age has value, that we often discredit these things and we think, well, there's nothing there. It's a downhill flow in life, just like the vase is beautiful and then it's broken. It's a downhill flow. But the answer is flaws have value. Change has value. Change brings freshness. It brings excitement. It brings so many good things. We used to say, in Pennsylvania German, we grow too soon old and too late smart, which means smart. And the idea is, no, we actually grow old as we are young and strong and vibrant, and we're reproducing and raising kids, and we gain in value because we age and we attain wisdom. And the price of that is the exchange of your physical vibrancy for a mental vibrancy. When I look back at what I knew 20 years ago, I'm sort of horrified. And in 20 years ago, I was in my 40s. I'm like, yeah, man, I've arrived. I'm middle age. Oh my gosh. But then in my 40s, when I consider what I thought was going on in my 20s, what a difference. So kintsugi, we have to celebrate what we perceive as flaws as not being flaws, as being a different type of value, and a value that brings freshness and newness and change. And when you look at the world through that filter, then all life is valuable. All phases of life, all presentations of life. There's difference, but there is not flaw. I have to say, too, if you're really thinking this through, you're going to realize that's about multiculturalism. That's about gender tolerance. Difference has value. It is not a flaw. And if there was ever a lesson we need right now, it is kintsugi. Okay, meanwhile, let's see. In the fluffy books, not much going on. I'm continuing now the Beatrice Hyde Clare series because she has a new series out with a different protagonist, and it's really quite clever. It really refreshes what she's doing. She's taking the whole Beatrice Hyde Clare series and she's refocusing them through the eyes of a different character. And it's very, very interesting to watch her do this. And this brings back everything I loved about the series, the wit, the freshness, the humor and snarkiness in the relationships. So this is the Verity Lark series. And I think the first book is A Lark's Tale. So I have a link in there to Lynn Messina and her Beatrice Hyde Clare series. And I just say you can go through that and find all her books. I still have Introduction to American Deaf Culture because even as we speak, I'm reviewing chapters 10 and 11 for a quiz. But it is worth reading. I'm on my second reading and I'm enjoying it and getting a lot more out of it because of the class. In terms of anything on TV, not really. I'm still working my way through The Good Place. I believe I'm just at the start of Series 4. Series 4 is what you see coming from Series 1. When you're in Series 1, you think, if everything is doing what you think it's doing here, then surely they're going to have to do it all again. Well, I don't want to ruin it, in a different way. And they do. And that seems to be series 4. And with this, I realized probably that would be enough to end the series, that there's only so long they can play out this premise. But I really do recommend The Good Place on Netflix as being very fresh and very intelligent. Something I really like, well, on the notes page, I call it Just So, but what it is, it's a picture of the tools that are currently on my belt chatelaine. Wow, 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 wow. I have been wearing my belt chatelaine all over the place. And I love it. It's so great to have the tools there. First off, they don't rattle or make a lot of noise. The only one that does is the tape measure, which is on the left in that picture. So I realized the easy thing to do. I take the tape measure and I tuck it up into my waistband. So when I walk, the tape measure is not hanging there. It is tucked into my waistband, but it's still connected. So I don't drop it or lose it or, let it slide out my skirt. But when you walk, the others do not make noise. They are a metallic coated plastic, and so they just make a soft tapping noise. You don't notice them. Next, I have 4 chains on my waistband. However, I've begun to realize you can play around with that quite a lot. And I've also noticed that you really do want to arrange where things hang on your waistband. So my loud, noisy, rattly tape measure is on the outside clip, so that's easy just to tuck it up in my waistband. I don't tangle it with the other chains. That leaves 3 chains hanging. On the center one, I actually have a magnifying glass. Just came this week and I love it. I didn't realize how useful that was going to be. And with the tape measure, it makes it easy to check the gauge as you knit. So right on magnifying glass. These are all from the same source, Ravelry Studios. The link is in a previous episode. And the actual chatelaine is from Sheldon Pewter, also on Etsy, different link. Okay, so the middle chain of the 3 remaining is the magnifying glass. It comes in a little pink tulle bag with a cleaning cloth. I suddenly realized I wanted to stay in that tulle bag. I am worried that the glass will break if I'm not careful when I sit down, if I hit a table edge or something. So I kept it in the pink tulle bag, which works just great. You just tighten the little ribbon at the top and it holds on perfectly well. You can tie it shut if you want to, but you can just tighten it shut with the pink loop of ribbon that goes through it. Will that tulle bag drop off? It could, but it would be kind of hard. The great news is that means everything else, when they shake, they hit the pink tulle bag and it deadens any noise. The exception, of course, is the tape measure, which, meanwhile, is tucked up in my waistband. Okay, so as you look at that picture, you see the rattly tape measure there. But then you see a little yarn cutting disc. You can pick this baby up at Joann's. They have these. Then you will see the pink tulle bag with the cleaning cloth, and you can just barely see the magnifying lens in the middle of it. Now, on that same chain, although it's sticking out to the right, to my surprise, I realized, I could hook a row counter, just a cheap plastic row counter. And I did, so you can see the row counter. Now, the row counter is not particularly attractive, so I could stick it down in the tulle bag. But right now, I don't have it there because I'm using it. And finally, on the other outside, I have a lovely cylindrical needle carrier. Okay, Ravelry Studios sells these for $4. You can get them with filigree and bronze and silver. I just have a very plain cylinder. I liked this so much I ordered another one for my necklace chatelaine. And yeah, it's true, I ordered another tape measure for the necklace chatelaine, and I have not been developing it too much because I'm so in love with the belt chatelaine. The belt chatelaine has dropped off me once. I can't think what I was doing. I was in a parking lot and I think I twisted or something, and to my surprise it popped off. No problems with it doing that. I've had it, I've worn it for days, but keep an eye on it. That's one of the reasons I'm glad that the actual chatelaine, the base of it that's clipped on my belt, is made of pewter. It didn't dent, it didn't get damaged. Anything lighter I might be a little worried about. You can, of course, get a pin-on chatelaine. I don't like that idea because I'm worried about pinholes in my fabrics. And also, the tools do not weigh a lot, but even so, I don't want to drag down on the fabric that way. But something I really like is my belt chatelaine, especially the arrangement that you can see in the picture. It looks great. It looks great. I can't believe how good it looks. You just put it on. Usually I have a sweater or a vest on, so the chatelaine itself, the beautiful base that's on my belt, is hidden. So you see these 4 little chains hanging down with just little objects. Most people don't even notice it from what I can tell. But boy, when you have that at hand, you are gonna be so happy. This is a great way to carry tools. And I have a small watch coming, which comes with a necklace and also a chain to attach to a belt chatelaine. I am probably gonna remove the chain because I can just hang it on the chains that are already on my chatelaines. But I'm really looking forward to having that little necklace. I have thought over and over about getting a pin-on watch like nurses traditionally used, or getting a necklace watch. And I can't think who said that to me, said I'm a nurse and I want a pin-on watch. They're out there on Etsy. Again, I don't need to put the pinholes in my clothing. If I were a nurse, I probably would. It is a really great idea to be able to have a watch. It's hanging upside down so you can look down at it. It's a great idea. But I am so looking forward to having the necklace watch. I just love my chatelaine. This is an unexpected joy. I always wanted one of these. Always thought I'd make one. I have a much better solution here. Put a lid on it. 2 things. I am back to the tea tastings. As I mentioned, I got the spring tasting flight from Plum Deluxe, which is a good deal. They say each one is like 3 to 4 cups. Not for me, it's not. It's probably about 2 cups. But the price is right. It was very inexpensive. I really like it. And so this week I was tasting the blueberry ginger herbal, and I found this too strong. This, as you can see, it's green rooibos, which means it's rooibos. There's not caffeine. Ginger and a bunch of other things, currant, blueberry, beetroot. Is that beetroot? Anyway, the point is, that was cinnamon and lemongrass. This stuff comes on strong, ginger. Smells great. I think for a cold this would probably work, but the flavor just was not right and the ginger was too hot for me. So I'm not going to give a big pass to the blueberry ginger herbal, but you should know it's out there. It's pretty nice, and if you can handle the strength of it, and you know, if you have any sense right now, you're thinking, but Gemma, just don't steep it as long. I like my tea dark and flavorful, but you might have a point. So the blueberry ginger herbal from Plum Deluxe, not one of my favorites, but might be really nice if you have a deeply painful cold. I've had a deeply painful cold. It just wasn't my cup of tea. However, the next one is called Spring Romance Black. Black tea, heather flowers, lilac essence. This has a fabulous scent of lilac. For me, the heather was a bit lost. It's because I'm not sure what heather should even taste or smell like. It's true, I've lived in Scotland and I have romped across mountainsides of heather, and yet I don't know what to expect from it in a tea. But I have to tell you, this was an unexpected pleasure. I love lilac. In fact, it's probably my favorite floral scent, up there with lily of the valley. You never see it represented in perfumes anymore. It's a very old-fashioned scent, so is lily of the valley. I looked at this and said, oh, you know, this is going to be about the smell. Actually, it's about the flavor. The flavor is great. You can taste that lilac. Just a little touch of sweetener. You don't want to put in the sweetener you would put into a black tea. Like if you were doing Ceylon tea, or what do we call it in America? Oh, I can't remember. Lipton has this really idiotic name, but it's actually Ceylon tea. At any rate, you don't want to flavor it the way you would flavor that. I mean, a good tea. Like, you don't want to flavor it with sugar like you would flavor an Earl Grey. You want to, if you're going to flavor it at all with a sweetener, which I did not. I'm drinking pretty much sweetener-free tea right now, and I'm enjoying that. You don't want to do it. You don't want to put in like a teaspoon per cup of a sweetener. I think you would just overwhelm everything that is good in this tea. But this tea has a lovely bouquet, lovely smell, has a lovely taste, and you will get the lilac up the back of your nose and into the back of your throat. So I do recommend the Spring Romance Black from Plum Deluxe. Meanwhile, last week I was shopping and I went to Target where I don't usually food shop, but there they had these big pork shoulders. And I love me some pork shoulder. These were bone-free, which I hate. I really like the bone-in pork shoulder, which are hard to find since the quarantine. I'm not sure why. Maybe pigs don't have bones anymore. I don't know. But anyway, it was bone-free. I like the bone because, it also makes a great stock. You stick it in the Instant Pot like you would with chicken bones for an hour, and it's already seasoned. So you stick it in the Instant Pot for an hour, and you get pork stock out of it with a lot of water. All right. Meanwhile, though, I brought them home, and I made pulled pork this week, and it sat in our Instant Pot for like 3 nights. We'd take it out, put it in the fridge, put it back in. This is so wonderful. This is the easiest way to make pulled pork. And I'm going to say it proudly because we always joke about my mother's father's side of the family are basically white trash in America. They would tell you this. This was, like I said, it's a family joke. Please don't be offended. All right. And so this is about the trashiest way I can think of to make a recipe, and it comes out great. And you only need a handful of ingredients. You set your Instant Pot on saute. You add some olive oil when it gets hot, and you throw in a chopped onion. You sizzle that baby for 2 to 3 minutes. And then you throw in your pork shoulder, and you saute on 1 or 2 sides for about 5 minutes per side. And then you add, I'm not kidding, a can of Diet Coke and about a cup of a barbecue sauce you like. And yes, you want to deglaze the bottom. I never take the time, but you want to. I just don't take the time. And then you go 100 minutes on manual in the Instant Pot. Ooh la la, everything melts. And it's so good. And so I was just pulling nibbles of this out. I have these wonderful coconut flour tortillas from Thrive Market. And you put that in a frying pan for just a second to warm up so it's not rigid. And then you lay it on the plate and you put the pulled pork on this. And then you put a big dollop of sour cream, guacamole, any kind of salsa you like. Oh man, you want to talk about, pulled pork, pulled pork. So the recipe, I've had it before, but the recipe is there. On the blather, well, I've told you a lot about the deaf culture class. Right now I'm trying to attend deaf events, and I'm just humiliated because I'm too scared to sign, which is considered rude. If you're in a deaf group and you know how to sign, no matter how minimally you sign. So I hide. We don't have to communicate. We're not supposed to need to speak ASL, take this class. You really do need, but that's another problem I'm not worrying about. But anyway, so I'm starting to attend events and think about it. Fortunately, Deaf Nation is coming up in Pasadena in May. We have to spend 2 hours at a deaf event, so Deaf Nation is pretty much going to take care of that. But I did do half an hour at a local pizza place, trying to watch the deaf people sign and talking a little bit. In class, I talk much more, which surprises me. I will talk to the teacher. I will talk to the speakers. We had a very moving experience. We had a speaker come in, and she talked about her experiences. Her family of origin is not English speaking, and they feel no need to be, which is great, but they're also not interested in learning how to sign with her. And her stories growing up are truly hair-raising, first in Germany and then in the San Fernando Valley, as she tries to be a deaf kid in all these cultures that people aren't signing to her. In Germany, when she was sent to school, they put her in a deaf and hard of hearing class where they taught them no language, but they tried to lead them through day-to-day activities they needed to learn, like how to make toast. And I don't know if that's still the truth in Germany. I don't mean to diss another country, because I don't think America does a whole lot better, frankly. But it has to be a little bit shocking when you realize most deaf kids born into hearing families, 90% of those kids are born into families, 90% of deaf kids are born into hearing families. Most hearing families never try to sign with their deaf child. I cannot understand that, but they don't. And a lot of the deaf siblings never learn. And so it's really kind of stunning when you hear these stories. So, of course, this particular speaker, her story became the basis for the scarf I made for the art project. But in the middle of it, it was very endearing. because she's becoming a social worker, and she's in an online program at Columbia University, yes, the Ivy League school, and she's so proud of that. And so at one point, I asked her a question about her program, and she talked about how she's doing an internship working with suicidal people. And she texts them, which is actually a normal way to do a suicide hotline now. They do a lot of texting hotlines. So she can do this perfectly well as a deaf person. And so she was looking at me, and I signed good work. And she stopped and looked at me, and then I signed, I'm a psychologist. And it was so funny. She literally boggled. Her eyes got big and her mouth dropped open. And then her eyebrows came down in a furrow. And she turned and she looked at the teacher, who was laughing. And the teacher said, she is a psychologist. And then she signed, she is worried that deaf people do not get enough help for mental health. And I signed, and for physical health. Because I have to tell you, when you start considering what it's like to be a deaf person in an emergency room, oh my God, talk about fear. So anyway, it was a very sweet moment. And so I came home very happy about that and did my write-up for it, which I believe I posted. I'm going to have to go check. On the pup date, Captain and Queenie are doing just fine. They're now backyard buddies. And, they're in during the day. Queenie is a little wildcat in the house. And we're working on that. And we realize part of it is that she feels very, very dominant when she's around me. She wants to dominate Captain's contacts with me. So they're working this one out. But it seems to be improving. Queenie wants to come in and race and jump on. She gets to the zoomies. She gets so excited. So we realize, the easiest solution is have her in the house a little bit more than we've been doing. And we've been sort of slowly discouraging the dominance. Instead, I've been dominating. At one point, Queenie came over and started aggressing me. And I did the senior dog thing. I quietly pushed on her shoulders until she went down to the ground. And then I held her there. And she swung her head back and forth, air snapping at my arm, and I held her there. And then she laid still, and I said, good girl, and I let her up, and her behavior instantly improved. If you're going to do this, you have to be careful you don't hurt the dog. But that is how a senior dog punishes a puppy. They push him to the ground, they stand on him, basically, but they don't put all their weight on him. They hold him on the ground until the other dog basically gets still and calms down. And I was shocked how well it worked on Queenie. I haven't done it to a dog in a long, long time. But they're doing pretty well. Queenie likes to bring me gifts. And she likes to bring me things that smell like me. Apparently I want those. So I have to be careful because that includes my sleep headband, my dragon paw gloves, my collars, my knitted collars, etc. It is very endearing. Captain, we have realized, if you open the front door of the house, Captain will not run out. And my husband said she's afraid that if you go out that door, you have to get in the car and go to the vet. I don't know, but I do know. For the first time in my life, I have a dog who is voting firmly with all 4 feet to stay with the humans, which is really charming. And Captain is just a touch neurotic. Queenie is high-spirited and fun. She is very much the collie personality. Captain is a noof. Captain is very like Baron was, so that's nice. The Hubs date, well, we had the son's birthday, as you know. They went to Disneyland, as I told you previously. The Hubs is doing great. He and the beloved son are catching up on work. My husband is spending part of every school day in school with my son. He's in a charter school, acting as his aide, because they're having a hard time keeping my son on task. And when he gets anxious, he'll do a lot to escape. So that's been working really well for both of them. My kid is turning out to be the nicest 17-year-old you would ever meet. He's just really nice and he likes to be with us. It's really charming, My husband the other day was talking about giving him driving lessons. I had to go into the bedroom and lie down. On the calendar, I still have the Grand Canyon because I need to remind myself to cancel those reservations. But the Evolution of Psychotherapy Conference is in Anaheim, December 12th through the 17th. And I will get my licks in for vacation time then. I already have accumulated about 5 days of vacation time, which makes me really, really happy. So that will be good. What that really means is we won't go to the Grand Canyon, but we probably will just go out to the coast and spend a few nights in hotels because we all like that, and we can drive home during the day and take care of the animals. So that will be good. Minerva gets the last word, and you can see her there lying on the footrail of our big queen bed, looking wistfully into space. Who the heck knows what she's looking at? I do. I was dangling a chain in front of her to get her to pose so I could take some cute pictures, okay? So just pretend, will you? But she's looking for spring because it gets hot, it gets cold, it gets hot, it gets cold. Yes, today is 63 degrees. Yes, tomorrow's high is 40. Seriously, winter, for the love of heaven, get out of here. So she is looking for spring, and I will regret it because then I will have to change my whole daily uniform. Whereas I've been so happy wearing my winter uniform of knitted socks, leggings, a high-quality turtleneck from a good manufacturer with a good lengthy skirt on the top of it, either made by me or made by a reputable company, and a hand-knitted sweater, and of course, all the mitts and hats that I'm making. So, when that goes away, who the heck knows, I'll run around naked. At any rate, Minerva gets the last word. The last word is, I think we are all looking for spring right now. Please remember that we are a community. When we take care of each other, yes, that's right, it means we're taking care of ourselves. So please remember to act like you're in a community. Please remember, wash your hands, get your vaccines, socially distance if you're in close quarters, wear a mask if you're in really close quarters. Overall, remember that we are here to protect each other in an act of love that protects us. So on that happy note, please, everybody, take care of each other, stay safe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.